So Jim, on the circular RNA front here, what's it been like in terms of, working with in the outsourcing realm, trying to find a suitable partner and develop a process, right?
Yeah, and I think so. I'd say we, we, we are luckily not in, and by design, what Taylor did just mentioned, right? We've invested. We have our strategy all along was to develop in house to a
Hmm.
reasonable scale.
Yeah.
We don't expect a CDMO or CMO to be an expert in circular RNA because we might not want them to be, right? This is where
Mm,
at this early stage, there is something about understanding your process.
yeah.
As a sponsor, you need to be, as Kelly just said, you need to be the expert. So
Yeah.
we need to actually not just be the expert on paper when we do some filing, but we actually need to understand the process. And I think some of the conversations is around not really around what you can for me specifically so much. I think
Mm,
is what capabilities do you have? What capital has been in place as far as what's your infrastructure, what's your equipment set, what's your personnel training status, right? What have you
yeah.
done that is applicable, not necessarily directly, but how can you help us achieve what we're looking for? And in terms of that relationship, right? And Kelly just said, the key one for me is there's three of them, right? It's how collaborative you are, because
Mm,
that's absolutely necessary. It's the respect you have for each other, because
mhm.
as I said, we don't expect you to know everything, just like we don't know everything about how your facility operates, right? So there's
Yeah.
a mutual respect, and then communication as transparent and frequent as often is the only way you're only going to outsource any sort of modality, never mind something that's as new as this. So I think
Yeah.
that's where we've been. I think that's the conversation we've had. Some very very positive ones, and some budding relationships that are going to
Mm,
support it. And it's also a modality that you know one-stop shops are not always your best bet, and even
yeah.
if it is, you still have material suppliers. You have
Hmm.
you know all sorts of pieces of this puzzle that you need to understand and kind of put together yourself. I think the
Yes.
one thing I'd say from a sponsor side of things is, especially with the newer modalities, and then the newer modalities and how they're going to be used. We're talking about something very different application than a vaccine, right? Based on
Hmm.
dose, based on frequency of dose, based on you know how sensitive different patient types are to our impurity profiles. We are not looking for in a therapeutic type setting. We're not looking for somebody that can just pump out a vaccine that we think
Yeah.
is well defined, which still again there's room to go there. So I think that's
Yeah.
where that honesty, respect, open dialogue,
Mm,
what we expect, what we need, where we want we see ourselves going. That has to be a two-way conversation. So
yeah. Yeah, Jeff, not to put you on the spot, you're probably
Yeah.
going to be our last comment of the hour here, but based on, I really like this notion too of thinking as we are transitioning into therapeutics and trying to ask the right questions for a therapeutic, right, of our process. How are you approaching, the myriad number of platforms, right, that are available today in the world of the outsourcing realm, today, and where do you, what are the biggest questions you're asking a potential
I mean,
partner?
I don't know that I have a whole lot more to add to and Jim said. I mean, it was our strategy. It was the Omega strategy to develop a lot of the process in house. We
Mm-hmm.
continue to develop the process, but when we did go out to outsource to get material made for clinic,
Yeah.
we worked very collaboratively with the
Mm-hmm.
CDMO.
Yeah.
We had to scale, and from that, as we went in, we found things that needed to be corrected, and we worked very closely. So it was very
Okay.
open communication, going
Mm-hmm.
back and forth, trying to figure it out and scale up. I honestly don't know how you can do that without having expertise internally.
Yeah.
We don't expect, and certainly when we went out initially, it was still pretty early in, it was very early in therapeutics and still pretty early in mRNA
Yeah.
production for GMP. Um, and so there wasn't this huge expectation that everybody would know what they were doing.
Yeah.
Um, I think we've seen the capacity go up a lot in the CDMO area. I think there's still a question about the real understanding and knowledge, but again, that's okay, right? Like I think as a sponsor, it's our responsibility to provide some of that.
Yes.
If I were to ask something of CDMOs, where I think that they really can help is they can, not necessarily they do, but they can see a lot of different mRNAs coming through. And so I think analytical development is one area where they may have more opportunity to see a whole lot more than the sponsor does.
Yeah.
And if they could, build up some of those expertise and be able to share those, I think that would be phenomenal, right? Like I see that as a real area that they can help out. Because the process is going to be a little different, and yes, they can bring something to that, but I would expect us to know more about